Resident Evil 4 is a gaming classic that needs no introduction. It's a one-of-a-kind action game in a one-of-a-kind franchise. While one day I would like to properly pay tribute to this game's amazing legacy and the memories it's brought me and many others, today I'd like to focus on an often overlooked piece of the game's legacy, the Resident Evil 4 preview disc. For the uninitiated, back in 2004, Capcom released this short little Gamecube demo for Resident Evil 4 a mere month before the game's official release date as part of a reward for pre-ordering the game. And you might think with such a short amount of time in between the release of the pre-order bonus demo and the release of the final game that there wouldn't be much difference between the versions, but there's actually a hell of a lot of small differences in this version that would have probably added up to an incredibly different Resident Evil 4 than the one we got if Capcom had stuck with this path for the game. In this video, I'll go over the things I noticed in my initial run of the demo that are different from the original, and then discuss some other details and tidbits I noticed upon further inspection and playing, and then cap it off with some commentary about Resident Evil 4's interesting development cycle. The game starts out with a few lines of text briefly explaining Leon's reasoning for being in Europe, with a very distracting grammar mistake, followed by the familiar cutscene of him being dropped off by the...
I'll go and have a look around.
What?
Right. Parking tickets.
So as you can hear in this clip, Leon's voice is the same, but his lines sound totally different from the ones in the final game.
I'll go and have a look around.
I'll go and have a look around.
Right. Parking tickets.
Right. Parking tickets.
As if Capcom wanted Mercer to give them better voice lines before the game released. Because it only seems to be Leon's voice. Every other character throughout the demo has the same voice they did in the original. Well, the few that show up. Yeah, the opening call with Hunnigan is completely omitted in this part. Probably for the better for the pace of the demo anyway.
Forget your makeup or something?
Some cool details that immediately stick out are the change in the look of the health bar, the sound of the handgun, the low visibility red laser, and there's no more spinning 3D model for the pesetas when you pick up the money here for some reason. There's also no cool sound effect when you pick up an item in this version, so no... The light beacons for the items you can pick up from dead crows or enemies throughout the demo are also marginally harder to see. The sound of the handgun's reload's also completely different too. At this point, I had decided to check my menu to see if there were any differences there, and came across one of the most interesting parts of this demo. The menu wasn't the familiar mini Tetris game we were all familiar with from the final release of Resident Evil 4. Instead, it was a block-by-block menu in the same vein as previous Resident Evil games, where one item simply holds one block of space, but instead of stopping at 8 or 10 blocks, this one stops at a whopping 60. I don't think you'll be needing extra space for the next 17 playthroughs. I feel like it would have been somewhat nightmarish trying to navigate around this menu considering there's also no way to reorganize or move items. Upon examining, I found the recognizable pistol was also a different model. Leon's handgun is a model that seemingly doesn't show up anywhere in the final game, now featuring a green grip instead of a brown one, also with the decocker on the slide. The gun's stats are also not displayed upon examining the gun, unlike in the final game. We'll touch back on the handgun later, but there's another interesting thing going on here in the inventory, and that is the knife. While it's not uncommon to see the knife in the inventory in a Resident Evil game by any means, it does feel weird to see in Resident Evil 4, as usually all that you need to equip it is pressing left trigger in the middle of combat without going into the inventory. The knife taking up inventory space does make a return in the 2023 remake, interestingly enough. Upon swinging the knife, it's a small detail, but Leon does a little lean forward in an attempt to get some more range with the slash. Also, whenever an item's picked up, rather than giving you the prompt asking you if you'd like to pick it up or leave it, the game just says, you got the X. The map looks different from the final games too. Moving along swiftly, we enter the cabin and reach the familiar cutscene with the first ganado.
Excuse me, sir?
With different voice acting from Leon and a different picture of Ashley. We then engage the man in combat and it becomes very clear how great of a decision Capcom made making the knife a constantly equipped weapon. The flow of combat is understandably not as fluid with switching the knife in and out of your hand via the inventory. I keep accidentally opening up my inventory. It's gonna be jarring seeing how the rest of the demo plays out with the knife being used like this. Speaking of knives, the familiar cut scene,
Kill yourself immediately!
I'm so sorry, of the cop car getting pushed plays. The second Hunnigan call is omitted. We head up the stairs, grab the ammo, jump out the window, and engage the next 3 Ganados. Oh hey, his attack animation is different too. Yeah, as far as I can tell, there's no iconic in this demo, which is absolutely sacrilegious. But other than that, the combat remains mostly the same. This typewriter doesn't save, and this crow doesn't drop a grenade anymore. But you could still save the puppy. Oh, the cute puppy. There's also no longer a red herb over here in this corner. I'm interested to know how many of you knew that the red herb was even back there. Leave a comment and let me know. Another voice line that didn't make it into the final game. Aside from that though, we continue through the opening section as fairly normal until we find this, an onyx stone. The description only refers to it as a small but precious gemstone. This type of treasure also never made it to the final game, and I can only assume the replacement of it was the spinel in the final game, worth 2,000 pesetas. It was also at this point I noticed it was entirely possible in this game to reload the gun from the inventory, which is incredibly weird to see because a keystone part of the Resident Evil 4 combat loop is getting away from the enemies and finding a safe spot to reload, hence why the game lets you upgrade your reload speed. So I'm glad they changed that before release. As we enter the gate to see the village, as you can imagine, the third call with Hunnigan is completely omitted, and we get to see the village with yet another unused and bit-crunched voice line.
Oi, tô passar.
This is also the first place where you might notice that the female Ganados are completely missing from the game. It's only male villagers. Forgoing the village's abhorrent lack of diversity and DEI, I take the path to the left and head into the first house on the left. I grab the herb and the incendiary grenade and decide to look at the items in the inventory. The icon for the incendiary grenade looks like a lump of clay. Also, 3 grenades? Holy shit. They treat you like a slut for weapons in this demo. Another detail that stuck out to me was the ammo. Rather than making a new inventory space after rolling over 50 like in the final game, it just keeps going up. Also, the inventory spaces that had items in them just remain blank, and as far as I can tell, there's no way to reorganize these slots. So I can only imagine it would have looked horrendously cluttered and hard to find and keep track of your items in a full playthrough. Also, they misspelled incendiary grenade. I decide to go and make the most of this demo and fight the first Salvador before running for the... Fuck. I decide to go make the most of this demo and fight the first Salvador before running for the shotgun. Salvador's recovery time from getting burned by the incendiary grenade is instant. He doesn't even flop over, he just takes the heat and keeps walking. But it does feel like his health is much lower in this demo than the final game. He dies, and rather than dropping the ruby like in the main game, he drops a large onyx stone. So now it's time for the climax of the demo. We run to the house and pick up the shotgun in all of its glory. I bust through the window and head around to the other side of the house to make a funnel for the enemies to come down and, instead of a spinel, pick up a small amethyst stone. I wait for Salvador, throw my last incendiary, and then take aim with my shotgun. And man, just listen to how this thing sounds. It sounds louder and clangier than the final games. I honestly think I love it more than the final game's shotgun sound. I'm not even kidding. I jump off the roof and run to the adjacent house and grab my first flash grenade and box of shotgun shells. I put one final shell in Salvador, finishing him off, and decide to just use the last of the time I have before the end of the village fight, going ham with the shotgun, and then...
Oh, la campana.
Es hora de rezar. Tenemos que irnos.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
That's where the demo ends and the game resets back to the main menu. I decided to go back in and explore more since I never got to try the flash grenades, and I want to use one of these. Oh wow, that doesn't stun them very much at all. Wow, that didn't last long at all. It stuns all enemies for a split second and then they're all right back to chasing you. The flash is also not as bright. Meanwhile, the final game has a longer effect on enemies and has a brighter flash. I also discovered the one yellow herb in the demo. The yellow herb only grants its signature max health increase when used mixed with a red and green herb. Otherwise, it doesn't seem to grant the effect and just functions like a red herb. So you need all 3 herbs for the health increase. You also can't combine the yellow and red herbs without the green herb. All of them combined also makes the icon orange instead of the red, green, and yellow colors in a test tube from the final game. Leon also doesn't immediately start walking with his hand on his side when he reaches orange health. Lastly, the tower you can climb for a box of shotgun ammo doesn't let you jump down. You have to wait for Leon to climb all the way down. Probably because a fall like that looks like it would fucking hurt in real life. But I'm glad they removed it because fuck realism, I want to get back into shooting shit. I really enjoyed seeing what Capcom's vision for Resident Evil 4 was in its earlier stages. A lot of the details I had noticed were actually assets or effects that came from even earlier versions of Resident Evil 4, such as the famous and enigmatic Resident Evil 3.5 gameplay video. Remember how I mentioned we'd touch on the pistol again later? Well, the pistol sound effect was actually in the older gameplay videos. This sound was also in other previous Resident Evil games like Remake and Zero. I knew I had heard it before, but I didn't quite put my finger on it until recently. It's cool seeing the details of this game's development, and especially the bits that made it into this demo, as this game went through so many changes and cuts that ended up manifesting, and still do manifest in modern Resident Evil games. Like the black Ouroboros monster that showed up in the early promotional material for the game that didn't show up until Resident Evil 5. It was also thanks to some of the earlier versions of Resident Evil 4 that we ended up with the masterpiece game series that was Devil May Cry. So I'm kinda glad this game went through the changes it did because I don't want to live in a world without Devil May Cry. That being said, some of these would have made the game, bluntly put, probably much worse than what we got if they were implemented fully, so I'm glad they were changed. But some, like the shotgun sound effect, I wish had stayed. Oh good god. Anyway, leave a comment, hit the like button, subscribe, and tell me what you thought of this experimental video I'm doing. I like receiving some good constructive criticism. My name is Dom, thank you guys for watching. See you later.